Okay, so this particular lesson started out with comparing Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. And basically what Reb Shlomo said was, Yom Kippur, we're apologizing for the wrongdoings that we did, and Tisha B'Av, we're crying over, how could I have done it in the first place? Right? It's like somebody offends you and they apologize, and so you forgive them, but there's something that got damaged. Like, like if we were really close to each other, how could you have done it? Right? So that's basically how he's explaining the difference between Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, is that Tisha B'Av, we're sitting on the floor and we're thinking to ourselves, like, how could I have done this? How could I okay, I apologize on Yom Kippur and so on, but how did it happen that I did all this, right? So, now, so Reb Shlomo points out that in the book of Lamentations, or Eicha, which is actually one of the 5 Megillot, there's nothing there about asking for forgiveness. There's no prayers in the book of Lamentations saying, like, God, we're sorry we did this, we're sorry we did that, because it's really just crying, because it's really crying over, how could I have done all this? That's what it's about. Right? So, Shalom Aleichem. Ashley is upstairs, by the way. So he says that the Beit HaMikdash, let's go on the top of page 206, that's where we're going to start. Beit HaMikdash b'tzorah ha'amokah biyoter hi refuah. The Beit HaMikdash, in the deepest sense, is really a place of healing. V'lo slicha. Now, even though among the sacrifices, right, we bring sin offerings, right? So, and you do confessions when you do your confession, when you bring the sacrifice, etc., etc. The main thing about coming to the Beit HaMikdash is about healing our relationship with Hashem. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that that we particularly at this time have to be conscious of is that the Beit HaMikdash is really is really about a physical place to help us realize that the real temple is in our hearts. Right? In other words, what is the whole thing about the Mishkan? The word Mishkan comes from the word shochen, right? It's one of the explanations, which means the dwelling place. Ve'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. They shall make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell b'tocham. On the pshat level, is I will dwell in their midst. Right? The Mishkan was at the center of the Jewish encampment. But the rabbis also say, it doesn't say I will dwell in it, but rather b'tocham, in them, b'toch libam shel kol echad ve'echad, in the hearts of every individual. Right? So the whole idea of the Mishkan is to make a dwelling place in your own being, a dwelling place for God. In other words, Hashem doesn't want you to have a relationship with Him. Oh, my relationship with God is in this building. Hashem wants He wants to dwell within our own hearts, within the heart of each person. So then, what do you need? What do you need the Beit HaMikdash for? You need the Beit HaMikdash because we need to have some kind of geographic place to reinforce this whole service of the heart. Okay. Now, the tragedy was that people began to think that they can do all kinds of things, and then they'll come to the temple and bring a sacrifice or two. God will forgive them, and then your slate is clean, and that's that. The grocery will do, and that's that. And it got so bad that people were doing this, and then they were continuing with all kinds of negative behaviors. And to the point that Yeshayahu, and we're going to be reading it in the Haftarah, in the prophet section after Torah reading this coming Shabbos, it's going to be called Shabbat Chazon. Yeshayahu's vision of what was coming, and it's a very, very, very intense chapter. And he says there, what do you do, Hashem, in God's name? Like, what are you doing? Like, coming and trampling in my courtyards. And when you lift your hands in prayer, I shut my eyes because your hands are full of blood. Which is, by the way, one of the lines that Shakespeare plagiarized in Macbeth. Lady, you don't remember Macbeth? So okay, so she can sit here. She's constantly trying to get the blood off her hands, the stains off her hands. Huh? Out damn spot. I don't know. Macbeth said that. Yeah, what are the words? Out damn spot. Anyway, so she can't get the stains of her guilt off her hands, So that's the line that Shakespeare took from Yeshayahu chapter 1. About the hands being constantly being constantly stained with her guilt. In any case, so people thought that the Beit HaMikdash was a place where you do your you did your transgressions, and now you got to sort of clean up. And it actually worked, but it worked so well that people began to think that, oh wow, look at that. I did my sins. I went to the temple. I got cleaned up. So let's do it all again. Let's do it again, right? And it got to a point where Hashem says, forget it. You're abusing the whole union of the Beit HaMikdash. You're abusing it because it's not about that. It's about our relationship. And how many times can you keep on bringing your mother flowers after you keep on breaking things in the house, right? Break something, bring you a flower, break something, bring you some more flowers. At some point, your father or mother is going to say, listen, it doesn't work that way, right?
They just won't use that.
Maybe.
It's nice to have lots of flowers,
right.
But what are we going to do if we don't have anywhere to put it?
Right. So Echa Yashva Badad, we're at the third line of page 206. Echa Yashva Badad, ani boche v'kulam bochim. I'm crying and everybody's crying. Amani boche b'tisha b'av. What am I crying about? Lama ani kol kach boded. Why am I so alone? Right? Right? Hashem moved out from the temple and from the Beit HaMikdash, and we're left feeling really alone. And the world knows it, right? Once I met this Jew in Montreal, he said, the younger generation has no idea what it was like. The younger generation has no idea what it was like for a Jew to walk on the streets of Montreal before 1948. Before we had Israel, he told me that the Goyim felt free. The Goyim felt free to attack you, and they knew that we had no homeland. Canada, as much as Canada's, Baruch Hashem, done a lot more good, but there is a history book about the Canadian government during the Holocaust. It's called None is Too Many. There was a famous prime minister called Mackenzie King, and when he was asked how many Jews are you willing to accept, how many refugees and so on, and his answer was none is too many. We got to Canada in 1951, and I know for a fact it was easier for former Nazis to get into Canada than it was for Jews. Anyway, so this was as a result of the Jews being for 2,000 years, as a result of being homeless, a homeless person. You think that you can do anything that you want with them because who's going to protect them? So Tisha B'Av, we're not crying over our sins, but we're crying over, look at the result of our sins, that we're so alone. Mazeh Galut, what is exile? Yesh li chaverim, I have friends. Ani nasui, I'm married. Yesh li yiladim, I've got children. And Gevalt, ani boded, but I'm so alone. Gevalt, ani boded, I'm so alone. Echa yashva badad. Oh, wow, how she sits by herself. Kol inyano shel Tisha B'Av, hu shekol ha'anashim ba'olam hem levad. The whole tragedy of Tisha B'Av is that people are alone. In other words, you are you and I am I, right? And the only way that we could be together, that we can really be connected, is we have to be connected with that one being that connects us all. Otherwise, we're not connected. We might be connected in the sense of, we might be business partners, or we might have some kind of other interest that connects us, at least temporarily, while if you get cold, let me know. That connects us, for a certain amount of time. But really, I'm still alone. You're still alone, right? Unless we actually connect with our essence, soul, which is part of the one of Hashem, with part of Hashem's oneness, and then I can learn to see you too as being part of the oneness of Hashem, then we're no longer separate. But even in the physical world, right, there's like science has been moving in the direction of for years now, of the realization that there is a oneness, there is a unity in the world. It used to be that was considered just to be it was sort of like an unproven theory that there's a certain unity in the world. That's why, for example, why in the world would you go looking for a cure for a certain illness in some plant that you find in Africa for a person who's got a certain illness in America, right? Because there was always this understanding that there is some kind of a unity in the universe. Now, like physics has come to the realization that you actually see it. Matter and energy are basically the same thing, just two manifestations of the same thing. So V'shuv Rabbi Nachman Omer. So right, so we messed up so badly that we ended up being alone, right? And that's what we're crying over on Tisha B'Av. The loneliness of life in this world and the being disconnected from the one. V'shuv Rabbi Nachman Omer, and further Rabbi Nachman says, הנקודה העליונה להיות קשור שוב עם הלמעלה זה יותר עמוק מלבקש סליחה. The yearning to connect with your supernal point, to connect with Hashem, that is greater, it's deeper than asking for forgiveness. אני ממש בוכה, I'm ממש crying, ריבונו של עולם, למה אני כל כך בודד? God, Master of the world, why am I so alone? למה אני לא קשור עם הלמעלה? Why am I not connected with the above? אילו הייתי קשור למעלה, גבלת, הייתי קשור לכל דבר קדוש. If I would be connected with the above, I would be connected with everything holy. אם אני לא קשור מהנקודה העליונה, but if I'm not connected with the supernal point, יכול להיות נשוי, I could be married, ואפילו יהיו לי 200 ילדים, I could have 200 children, אני לא יודע איך, עדיין אהיה בודד, but I don't know how, but I'm still going to feel alone. I'm still going to remain alone. ראו את כל העולם היום. Look at the whole world. Everybody feels alone, right? So it says, אני רוצה שתדעו, I want you to know. כתוב, it says, Bilam says, Hein am levadat yishkon. Behold, this is a nation that dwells alone. Yehudim yoshvim levad. Jews are alone, right? We're always singled out. We noticed in the last couple of weeks, even as recently as last Friday, there have been reports of places in Syria being bombed by, I don't know which planes, American planes or Russian planes, whatever it is, and civilians and children have been
Getting care from Israel.
have been getting killed, and I don't see the media and the world freaking out over it like when something happens to here. It's just amazing. It's just another way of pointing out that alone being basically means singled out, singled out, right? You're not part of everybody else, okay? Which is true, right? So Bilam, when he said, he was talking about, he was saying like, wow, look at these people. They have the ability to withstand the test and the oppression of isolation. יכול להיות שיש חושבים שזה יפה. So you might think, some people might think, well, that's like a pretty positive thing, that, like, you know, like that we could be alone. אבל זה עצוב, but it is sad. איך ישבה בדת, גבלת ריבונו של עולם, גבלת ריבונו של עולם. We're not here in this world to be alone. We didn't need to come to this world to be alone. תחילת תשעה באב היא סעודה מפסקת. We begin the fast on Tisha B'Av by the meal just before the fast is called סעודה מפסקת. It's the meal with which we interrupt eating. כל אדם מחויב לאכול לבד. At the end of the meal, usually at a meal, people sit together at the table and you know, chat a little bit. It's like, you know, eating is a very social thing, right? But at the end of the Sudan Mafseket, before the fast begins, everybody takes like a hard-boiled egg, and you dip it in ashes, and you sit on the floor and you eat it, and that's like, you know, you drink something, and then the fast begins. And again, you don't chat during that time. It's time to experience the isolation, the loneliness.
The paragraph before reminds me of a teaching that we learned from Avinu, that in order to be close to Hashem, we need to be close with people. And if we're not close with other people, we can't be close with Hashem.
Right.
So yeah, it is kind of a negative concept where it says, and we're not able to connect with others. We're not really able to connect with
Right.
Hashem.
So, page 207, Madua, why do we do this? כיוון שיש דבר אחד שמקשר את כל העולם יחד. Because there's one thing that actually brings people together. כשיש סעודה, מזמינים אנשים. When you're making a feast, you invite guests. יושבים על יד אותו שולחן, and everybody sits by the same table. אני אומר, ריבונו של עולם, so at the סעודה מפסקת, I'm saying, Master of the world, זה לא עזר, it didn't help us to eat together. הזמנתי אנשים לשולחן שלי, אכלתי איתם, I invited people to my table, and I ate with them, ואני עדיין לבד, and I'm still feeling very alone. So אני רוצה שתדעו, I want you to know, שוב, again, לבד, alone, פירושו, that means שאני שם לב שיש נקודה עליונה. That means that I'm aware that there is a supernal point. שהרי מי לבד, because after all, who is it that's alone? הרגליים לבד, is it my feet that are alone? האור לבד, is it that my skin is alone? הפנימיות היא לבד, is my inner essence that feels alone. Right? אני צריך להיות קשור למשהו, I need to be connected to something. קשר זה כל כך עמוק. Being connected, knotted together is something so deep, כל כך עמוק. Okay, so what we got to on Thursday? Now we continue.
They say that
Yes.
in English, alone in the crowd. By the way, psychologically, it's a very common malady in America.
Yeah.
Much of psychosis is people feeling that they're alone and nobody cares about them. I mean, there's a reason for that. But
True.
I'd like to add to what
Michal.
just said. I think to be alone with no one around is difficult. To be alone when you're among other people, especially in family, among people that you think should love you, it's much
It's much more difficult. Yeah,
Much more difficult.
true.
up to a point, I'm speaking personally.
Yeah.
That I live. People say you live alone. I say no. I live with God.
Right.
I have a very strong since coming here. A very strong sense that God is with me. He's with Ko on Israel.
Baruch
When
Hashem.
we take the word levad and like split it up, it's lev daled, lev Hashem.
Oh, nice.
So it's like we always have
Isn't that
God with us. Like even though we feel alone.
As you
That's
want to
always
get the
here.
door, okay, I'm getting. Okay, Ben's got it. Thank you.
You know the Mashiach is definitely on the way when the
No,
older
no,
generation
no,
learns from the younger.
No,
Good.
Shachasaki.
It's very good.
Yeah. I also heard. Just one second. I also heard from. I heard yesterday. My son-in-law told me that Badad is a Rashi Tevot b'chol drachecha da'ehu. Know him in all your ways. Shavua tov.
Recite that again.
B'chol drachecha da'ehu. Know God in all your ways. B'chol drachecha da'ehu. Know him. Da'ehu.
Rachecha means in all our ways.
In all your ways.
I should know.
In all your ways.
I should know Hashem. Whichever way I go.
Whatever you're doing. Yeah. Okay, so Pesach, we're a little bit before the center of page 207. So he says that Pesach hu Yom Tov ze kan lemata. Shavuot hu Yom Tov ze kan lemata. Bepurim hakol lemata. Pesach are holidays being celebrated here below. Shavuot here below. Purim, everything is below. But Tisha B'Av, but on Tisha B'Av, Hakol Lemala. It's all about above. He explains. B'Tisha B'Av, Hakol Lemala. Gewalt, ani shochev al haritzpa, v'omer ribono shel olam, bevakasha, ten li ladat ma kore lemala. Tisha B'Av, I'm sitting on the ground, and I'm saying, Master of the world, please let me know what's going on above. ואז ברגע שאני כבר לא יכול לסבול, and then when it comes to the point where I can't take it anymore, I don't have any more vessels to take all this pain, so then בחצות יום תשעה באב, at midday, אני ממש חוזר לעולם הזה ומשיח מגיע. And that's where I get up off the floor, and I return to life in this world. And it's at that time after Chatzot that Mashiach is born.
We read this part on Thursday as well.
What did you say?
We read this on Thursday as well.
Yeah, but this is where we stop now. ודבר נוסף, an additional point. לאדם ואומר, if I approach a person and I say, בוא נהיה קשורים, connected. אני יכול לדבר איתו 100 שנה ועדיין לא נהיה קשורים. I can talk to him about it and still not be connected. קשר הוא מתנה מן השמיים. Connection is a gift from heaven. This is what we were saying before, right? Huh?
I've never heard that.
Right? In other words, the reason that you can actually be one with another person is because you're created in the image of God. And because you're created in the image of God, so therefore you can connect with Hashem and be part of His oneness, and therefore you can also connect with all other people and really experience being one. Okay? אפשר לשבת על יד אדם, you can sit next to a person, ולדבר איתו 200 שנה, you can talk to him for 200 years, ולא להיות קשורים, without being connected. בכל הזמן להסתכל בשעון ולחשוב, and you could be sitting there for 200 years talking with this person, and every couple of moments you're looking at your watch and thinking, When is the guy finally gonna leave me alone? The story goes that these two women were released from 30 years in Siberia. They shared a cell. Anyway, they're finally released, and they're sitting outside, and on a park bench, and they're talking to each other. So the guard comes out. He says, "What are you doing? You just spent 30 years talking to each other. Like, why don't you go? You're free now." So she says, "I forgot to tell her something." Okay, so, huh?
Not a joke.
It's not a joke. Huh? So the ability to actually be one, to be connected, that is a gift from heaven. It's a gift from heaven to be able to be in unity with another person or with many people. People think that Shlomo was the way he was, that he was able to connect with so many people and love so many people because he just had that kind of personality. It's not true.
Because he had the gift.
He
realized.
He worked to get the gift. Understand? He didn't have it. Gedalia Fleer told me that he used Shlomo as a young man when he was still in the yeshiva world. He was a very intolerant person, which goes naturally with people who are highly gifted and talented. Highly gifted and talented people are not very patient.
Or very free.
Huh?
Or
No,
very
because they have
standards.
high standards, and I told you that most of the kids who used to get sent to my office when I was head teacher of a branch in Montreal, of a school in Montreal, they were actually the best kids in school. They just couldn't stand sitting in class and listening to somebody that they were 10 times smarter. This kid is sitting there at least 10 times smarter than the teacher, and they have to sit in the desk like the whole time, like some of them could do it, but some of them just like, the best thing I could do right now is get myself kicked out of class. See you tomorrow. Good. Right. Oh, your cap. I said, let's get after him. Go run after him. Go run after him. Run the other way. Not this way. That's Ben. That's Ben. That's not him.
Different Ben.
Yeah. Okay, he got him. Okay. So,
I'm not trying to separate from you. Only from the air conditioner.
huh?
I'm not trying to separate from you, only the air conditioner.
Oh, very good. Yeah, no, it's not a good. I only do it every so often just to pull out the air. Okay. So the the issue of you can have like really close friends and but to really be one, to really be united and not to be alone is like you really got to be in touch with your neshama, which is a chelik of mimal mamish, which is a real part of Hashem, and when you're in touch with that, then you can really be one with everybody. So I was saying that that like I once heard that like Reb Shlomo was a Kanai. He was quite a zealous type of person. Of course he was a zealot. The Reb Shlomo was a zealot also, but they used their zealousness in a very positive way. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago on my parashat, and I had written it about it the year before, describing Reb Shlomo and the Lubavitcher Rebbe as being zealots with their love for Israel. and Reb Shlomo also. I also actually the part that I sent out this Friday. There's a transcript there. Did you see it of Reb Shlomo at the concert that he did in Arizona? It was like 1992 when Rabin was giving away parts of Israel. Part of the Camp David stuff. If you see the video there,
Where he really got angry.
And furious.
Yeah.
You saw it? You've seen it? It's online.
Not that particular.
You can't believe, like, it's hard to believe that the roof of the building didn't go flying off. Is this gesehen? No, look it up. And anyway, so he says, you can sit next to someone and speak with them for 200 years. And not be connected. And you can constantly keep on looking at your watch and think, when's the guy going to leave me alone finally? And in distinction to that, you can meet somebody and you mamash feel connected right away. זה עמוק 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 עומק העמקים. ודעו לכם, מנו בתשעה באב, on Tisha B'Av, כשאני בוכה על הקשר, when I'm crying over my connection, גוואלד אני קשור, then I really am connected.
It's a paradox. I'm crying over how I'm not connected, I'm connected.
That's right. I just read a story, it was printed a few years ago. This man came into the Beis Medrash of the Hasidim of the Husyatn, the rabbi.
Which rabbi?
Husyatn was a descendant of the visionary.
Polish.
Yeah, Ukraine. A descendant of the visionary. And this is in the 30s actually in the 50s. There was a time when all the Hasidic rabbis were based in Tel Aviv. You know that? And the reason that they preferred to be in Tel Aviv is because Tel Aviv was the only city the only city in Israel without a church. Eventually, they moved to Yerushalayim. There still are, or to Bnei Brak and so on, but the Shenkin Street in Tel Aviv, which is like a really hip area and so on, was used to be shtibel after shtibel after shtibel.
Wow.
Anyway, so this man, dressed like Bnei Akiva type, kippah struga and everything. He comes into the Beis Medrash, by the Husyatn, the Rebbe, and he finds an Orach Chaim on the bookshelf, sits down and is learning very, very intensely. Anyway, people wanted to know, who's this guy? He didn't look like a chassid or anything. So this man went over to talk with him, and at first he didn't want to talk, but when he found out that this man that was talking to him was the son-in-law of the Rebbe, so he told him the story. He said a few weeks. He said that he grew up he was born before the war in the Ukraine, and his parents were actually Hasidim by the Rebbe, by the Husyatn Rebbe, and then came Zionism, and he joined a Zionist youth group, and especially after the war, and they made Aliyah, and slowly, all the religious things that he was doing were getting dropped, and he noticed that his friends were becoming really, really going far and becoming very not observant. And he decided, no, he remembered how his parents were and how and how they, how warm life was, etc. That's, by the way, that's another thing, is that one of the things that attracts people back to to Yiddishkeit is really the warmth of the community as compared to, like like in the modern societies, people don't really connect with each other that much. Anyway, so he remembered that his father, Reb Shlomo, used to learn from the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. So he decided, okay, he's also going to learn from the Orach Chaim. Then he says a few weeks ago, he had I don't know if the right term is a near-death experience or an actual death experience. And he remember while he was asleep, and he felt like his soul left his body and was up there in Shemayim, and he's brought into a room, and there are two people sitting there like judges and so on, and his trial begins, and they're saying, "Listen, Mister, you don't look so good. You don't have such a good record, And then comes in another figure and sits down between the two, and he says, "This man learns Orach Chaim HaKodesh every week. Get him out of here." And like Mamashis, they took him, the angels took him, and they forced his neshama back into his body. And then he says a couple of weeks ago, I'm walking here in the streets of Tel Aviv. He was actually living in Haifa, but he says he was walking in the streets of Tel Aviv, and he sees these Hasidim walking with some Rebbe, and he rushed to sort of catch up and get a glimpse of who was this Rebbe. Anyway, he followed them into the Beis Medrash, and he asked if he can go in to see the Rebbe. He goes in to see the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, "So who are you?" So he says he broke down and he started crying. He says, "Why are you asking me? Just 2 weeks ago you sent me back into this world." So why am I telling this story? You understand, there are people that are, most of us have trouble connecting with the person that's sitting next to you even, right? Even if they're sitting next to you for who knows how long, right? And then there are tzaddikim that they're connected, they're so connected, they know what's going on in Shemayim, and they know what's going on down here, and they're really, really connected. And that's why, that's what a relationship between a chassid and a rebbe is really supposed to be all about. Not always does it work out that way, right? Without knowing why. There's also a story about Reb Shaya the Kerastira. You heard about Reb Shaya the Kerastira? Kerastira wasn't this guy from Reb Shaya, right? Happens not, right? Reb Shaya the Kerastira was known like for his amazing Chasnas Orchim. Every Moshe Shabbos he would shecht a sheep, and he had like a big Malava Malka feast that went through the night, and people would come there all the time. Shlomo tells the story. You can hear all the stories that Reb Shlomo told. They're online, by the way. It's amazing. Story after story, huh?
I didn't hear this one.
So this woman from Hungary, or no, from Germany actually, one night late at night, she knocks on the door of Reb Shaila's house, and he opens the door. Everybody else in the house was already sleeping. He opens the door, and she takes a look at him, and she says, "Yeah, this is him, and she faints. Okay, so who was she? What was the story? The story was that she was a mother of 4 children. She wasn't religious, and she had gotten sick, and she was already up in heaven, and she's already being judged to go, to get cleaned up. And all of a sudden, some tzaddik comes into the room, says, "What's going on here? She's a mother of 4 children. Are you kidding? Her kids need her. And he turns to me and says, Guy Shine, get out of here. And she returned to her body. Anyway, when she recovered, she said, I got to find this man. I got to find this tzaddik. She didn't know much about Hasidim or anything like that anyway, but she was a well-to-do woman, and she arranged to start going around, like, visiting different Hasidic courts and different rabbis. And she had spent a long time, maybe 3 years, looking for this tzaddik, and she can't find him. Anyway, so maybe it wasn't 3 years, whatever it was a long time. Anyway, so she's in the wagon taking her back to the train station somewhere in Hungary, and the wagon driver sees that she's really upset, and he says, "What's the problem?" So she told him, "I'm looking for this tzaddik, and already for a long time, and I can't find him." So he says, "Describe him." So she described him, like, she had a very vivid picture of what he looked like. She says, "That's my Rebbe, Reb Shlomo." Turned around the wagon and drove to Karastir, and she knocks on the door, and he opens the door, and she says, "Yeah, that's him," and she fainted. So there are people that they're so connected. They know what's mamish going on, unbelievably. Not only, and then there are tzaddikim that they are fixing souls that are already in the other world. Once I heard this story on Reb Shlomo's yahrzeit. This American Jew comes into this Chassidish to the Keres Diribus Medrash in Borough Park. It was the yahrzeit, and he brings a whole kiddush. And they say, "What do you have to do with Reb Shlomo?" So he says, "I never met him, but I'll tell you the story. I happened to have been in the hospital. I was sick for it at one point, and the guy in the bed next to me was telling me about his Rebbe, about Reb Shlomo, and how he did all these miraculous things. Anyway, so I figured, okay, why not me too, And he says he had a laundry business, and there was this Irishman across the street that opened up a laundry business also. And the guy was making him a lot of trouble, breaking windows, this and that. Anyway, he didn't want the competition. He wanted to get him out, So he didn't know what to do. So he wrote a letter to Reb Shlomo, who was in Europe. He gets and sent a couple of dollars donation. Gets a letter back with 4 little squares of paper with instructions that he should put these 4 pieces of paper on his front window at the 4 corners. Okay. Sunday morning, he comes back to his store. He was closed for Shabbos. And he sees that the Irishman's place across the street is totally burned down. It was firebombed or whatever. The police caught the guys. What ended up was, what he found out was that this Irish guy had hired some hooligans to go and burn down his place. And they came there on Friday night, late Friday night, or late Motzei Shabbos, I don't know, and they couldn't find his place. They couldn't see it. It's like, they had the address, but they couldn't see it. And then finally one of them says, "Well, there's this laundry place across the street. It must be that place," which belonged to the guy that hired them to burn his place, So they went and they burned that place down.
It reminds me of the Mooncatch passport.
The Mooncatch passport, not Mooncatch. Anyway, so you understand what I'm illustrating over here is what Reb Shlomo was talking about. That if you're really connected, you you really can connect across boundaries, across continents, across all kinds of places, even from this world to the other world. Yes.
First time in 46 years I've heard the name Karashtir.
Yeah.
Because when I was in Yeshiva University,
Oh,
the
yeah.
student organization,
Right. Yeah.
the student organization of Yeshiva every year we would order through them hand-baked
Karastira
It's called
matzah.
Karashtir. It was called Karashtir. I said, what's Karashtir mean? Never heard that until now.
Yeah,
They must make matzahs.
They make matzah, but they have a place in New York. They even to this day they have Karastira matzah.
Where?
Can you spell it?
K in Hebrew. Okay.
Doesn't it?
No, in English, Kerestir. Kerestir or whatever.
It was K.A. In those days they spelled it K.A.
K.A. whatever. Karastir.
K.A.R.A..
Reb Shlomo Karastir.
If one is connected above truly, or as much as one can, would it stand to reason that if any harm is going to come to that person, Hashem would change it around and the harm should come to the other person?
Yeah, you're asking me to answer a question which I'm not able to
It
answer.
doesn't work 100%.
No.
When you tell that story, the first thing I thought of was the Holocaust.
Look, in any case, you can't extrapolate. I'm just telling you a story about a tzaddik that, that was an exceptional Baal Machnas Orchim and everything and so on, and and there are tzaddikim that and even these great tzaddikim, they're not necessarily able to do this 100% of the time, or for everybody. When Arik Sharon was visiting the Lubavitcher Rebbe once, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe said to him, what's your plans for going back to Israel? And he told him he's supposed to take such and such a flight. And the Rebbe said to him, don't take it. Okay? So Sharon wasn't a religious man. He wasn't going to give the Rebbe's advice much credence. But it turned out that events were such that he couldn't take that flight. And that flight was hijacked. In other words, the hijackers knew that Sharon was supposed to be on the flight, and they hijacked the plane. So then afterwards, people asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe, why didn't you tell everybody not to take that flight? Why did you just tell Sharon not to take it? The Lubavitcher Rebbe said he didn't know that the flight was going to be hijacked. He just knew that all that was revealed to him was that he shouldn't take that plane. You understand? So it's not like these people necessarily know everything and everything, and even with people that they can help, there are people that I know that the Rebbe Mamish, brought healing to them in unbelievable ways, and there are other people that the Rebbe said you have to go see the doctor, and they ended up not making it. Reb Shlomo has a son who, when he was a teenager, he had cancer. Reb Shlomo himself tells the story in his book, and Reb Shlomo is quite well known in the scientific community too. And the doctors there wanted to do certain surgery, but Reb Shlomo is a chassid, and so he asked the Rebbe. The Rebbe said no. And usually the Rebbe followed doctor's advice, right? But this time he said no. And he told the doctors, you're not doing surgery. They got really angry at him, but he stood his ground. And he said his son is the only one from the entire world that's alive today. So what about everybody else? It wasn't revealed to the Rebbe that, what do I know? But that nobody should do the surgery. He just knew that this individual should not do it. But because then afterwards, people had people they had tinus and the Rebbe, why didn't you tell everybody? It's not a tiny. It wasn't. It was that information wasn't given to him. Anyway, all these stories are really basically about the whole Indian of being connected, and that's what we're just going to be Rosh Chodesh of this Friday, and this is what it's all about. It's really being connected. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow in Hashem.
At
Right.
the Shuv.
The Shuv. Okay?
What is it again?
The third line on page 208.
Can you just tell me what is the Rebbe's name, Rebbe Shayla?
Reb Shayel from Yeshayahu. Shayel.
I know that name.
What's that?
You
Yeshayahu?
know the name Yeshayahu?
Yeah.
Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
So in Yiddish it was pronounced like Reb Yeshayel.
That's my name.